Welcome to another riveting session of our webinar series, A Day in the Life of. We are very, very excited to introduce you today to Undine. She is a terrestrial ecologist. Undine, welcome to the Gradlinc series.
Hi, thank you.
Cool. So let's get started. You have a very unusual and very interesting title, a terrestrial ecologist. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So, just to start, terrestrial ecologist is something I only figured out what it actually is in the last year, I would say. And it's a very broad field. So, in the broadest sense, what we do is basically go and see what is in the environment in terms of plants and in terms of animals. If anyone wants to build anything, we need to figure out before you change what is happening in nature, what's actually going on. And that's kind of what I do. So that's in a very broad term, but you can also call me a specialist or a biodiversity ecologist or even a consultant. In the end, there's so many different names, but we need to figure out what exactly is happening in nature and what human activities will do to it.
Okay, that's very exciting. Tell me, what did you study to become this specialist consultant terrestrial ecologist?
So I studied zoology, just straight up zoology with no other subjects. Zoology is basically the study of animals. So for ecologists, like I just mentioned, we also look at plants. But yeah, I just did zoology, only animals. In the end, a better subject that you could have studied might have been ecology. It just means you have some plants subjects thrown into your final year. But as
Okay.
long as you go somewhere into the nature, sciencey nature direction, so BSc zoology, BSc botany, BSc ecology, all of that would work for this.
Okay, that's interesting. It's interesting that you studied zoology, which is actually the specialist in animals, but you actually deal more with flora and fauna. What made you change over from one to the other?
So, kind of two things. I still prefer to work on animals. It's just that when you go to the field to separate the plants or the flora part, the whole ecosystem from the animals is a very difficult thing to do. So it's something that comes as one, even though I still love the animals part slightly more than the plants part. So that forced me into it. But years ago, when I chose what I wanted to study, I had no idea what an ecologist is or what they do or even that it exists. So I didn't think about my career now when I chose what to study. I just chose my love for animals and that started it.
Okay, well, that's great. I mean, you've got to, I guess, when you think about when you're going to university, an important factor to consider is what you're actually passionate about, because that would be a good sort of jumping off point into your career. Okay.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So, Undine, tell us, what is a day in the life of Undine Erasmus like as a ecologist?
All right. So again, two different days, and they're vastly different. So I need to explain both.
Sure.
We have half the time we spend in the office, and that just means we are writing reports, we are doing project management, working with clients, working with the client's clients, working with the team. So, for example, we have different teams. Sometimes I need to work with all the different specialists, make sure they're on the same page, do that thing. The bulk of the office work is management of incoming projects or projects that are already happening. So that's
Okay.
just making sure everyone knows what's happening and making sure the client still knows what's happening and the company knows. And report writing. So every time you go to the field, you actually need to write down what you saw, what mitigations we are providing. In the end, the goal is that we can tell our clients, are they allowed to develop or not? And we need to write this down in a way that we've seen what's in the field. Now we need to tell the clients what we've seen and what they can do with it. So that's at least half of it, probably
Yeah.
more, the office work. The other days is field days, and they're the fun days. This is one of the perks of this job is you get to go out into the field and basically walk around and write down, make notes of what you see, anything that's alive. So it is more work than that. Sometimes you walk 20 kilometers a day and you have to do it the next day and the next day. So it's rough on the body. It's a lot of physical work. And you need skills to be able to do this, because you need to be able to ID a lot of things you see. You need to be able to look at the field, see if it's in good or bad condition. But you get to walk around, get up maybe 6 o'clock in the morning, have a breakfast, drive to where you need to be, get out of your car and walk around in nature and see what there is. So that's a big plus for sure of doing this job.
Yep.
And if you're lucky, it takes up a third to a half of your time.
That's nice. Okay. So you definitely need to be someone who enjoys being outdoors for
Yes.
sure. Yeah.
For what I'm doing, definitely. There are
Yes.
some related fields that you're outside less, but
Yes.
if you want to be an ecologist, it would for sure help to actually enjoy being outside.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned skills that you require, identifying the different species and so on and so forth. Maybe we can talk a little bit about those skills. Like, what kind of skills do you think you need to be successful as an ecologist?
For sure. So this is also something I didn't realize until recently, and it's something I've only started to experience or realize that I have to learn while doing this
Yep.
job. So it's definitely something that would help someone if you're thinking of coming into this direction. The
Okay.
skills you will get from studying that are very important, but you will get them even if you think you might go into a different direction. It's part of most degrees in a BSc direction. Most
Yep.
important one is formal writing experience. So if you're writing reports or writing letters, doing permitting, all of the things like that, you need to know how to write in a formal language that is understandable to people with different levels of education, and making references. Um, so it has to be according to the rules. Must make sure it fits in with legislation. Very important, and you will get that. But the extra part is field skills. So being physically fit is definitely handy. You need to be able to walk around, and your feet have to be able to take it.
Yep.
And then cool skills, like you basically have to be Indiana Jones. So if you walk in the
Nice.
field and you see this grass, you have to be able to identify it. And there are
Okay.
too many plants in the world, or even just in our country, to be able to identify all of them. But having a good idea of the different families of plants and the different families of animals, how the tracks of animals can differ, basically their place in the food chain. So you can see if this one's here, maybe we'll find some of its prey items as well because they're there. That kind
Yeah.
of skill is something you get by being outside and opening your eyes, and it is very, very valuable.
Okay. Wow. That's interesting. I'm getting the sense from you that there's a lot of knowledge that you need to pack into your head, in order to do this job. Would you do you, like would it be more beneficial to further your studies in terms of postgrad or further? What's your opinion on that?
So there's different ways of getting to this point. I did a master's study, which
Okay.
definitely helps me at the moment. So I have a MSc in zoology.
Yes.
It helps me firstly by opening up a little bit more growth because I'm more qualified, but it also helps your brain develop more, in my opinion. So studying
Yes.
more, you're forcing yourself to learn, put yourself in difficult situations. That's always a benefit. The minimum you need to be able to do a job like this is most likely an honors degree. You can do it with just a BSc, but most likely the person with the honors degree will get hired. So it's not a
Yeah.
requirement by law, it's just making sure you are someone that catches the eye of the potential employer. So
Of
I would
course.
recommend honors at least. And then if you can, while you're doing maybe third year, you can start earlier, but third year or honors, if you can do help people out with their field studies. Because
Okay.
everyone likes spending time outside, but at the end saying, okay, listen, I like to take long walks outside, it doesn't mean that much.
Yeah.
But if you have been helping people, maybe shadowing is a good start. But for example, if we go to a big area, sometimes people just need an extra set of eyes just because it's
Yes.
so big and you need more time. So if you can get a way to start helping out people going to the field while you're still studying, it will make your growth in the career and to find a start in the career a lot better.
Yeah. So these opportunities for students who are still studying, how would they go about finding job shadowing or internship experience in your industry?
Very good question. It is probably quite hard to do. This is an industry that is difficult to get into. Even for people who have postgraduate degrees, it's usually a struggle to find a job. So the best would be, in my opinion, to start on LinkedIn, maybe Google, find companies who are doing this type of work, and then send them an email. Just literally
Yeah.
contact as many people as you can. Many people might not answer you, but some will. And even if you can't contact the boss of a place, you can contact some of the employers. Just ask them to, like, you want to start building experience. Maybe they will let you edit the reports, proofread it at the start, but that's already a start. And then always make sure, if you get this opportunity, that your quality of work is very good, because that's how you make sure that they will let you do something again.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, it's work experience at the end of the day. Every little bit that you do, you add to your CV. So when you're actually looking for your permanent position, you have something to actually show that, you have a little bit of experience. Undine, you also spoke a little bit about travel. So is this local? Is this overseas? Maybe we can talk about the travel a little.
Sure. So it depends on what company you're working for. At the
Yeah.
specific place that I'm working for, we do things right across South Africa. Most of our projects are located in Limpopo, Northwest, and Mpumalanga.
Yeah.
But we have projects in Cape Town, we have projects in the Kruger. We recently had a project in Mauritius, which is not even just South Africa. Furthest
Nice.
country would be Sierra Leone,
Okay.
up north in Africa. But most of the projects are local. But it's a good point that you make, because it is something that requires a lot of travel. So if
Yeah.
you don't enjoy being away from home for extended period of time, again, you can do this, but it's kind of a related field.
Yes.
My company would send us away from home, mostly in South Africa, sometimes to cooler places like Mauritius, if you're lucky,
Yeah.
for a week at a time, maybe more even.
That's very exciting. To think when you think about certain sort of like science related degrees, you think that they would also be local. So it's so exciting to actually hear about companies where there's opportunity for you to possibly travel a little bit.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
You even get
Um.
some, sorry, you
No,
get
please go ahead.
large companies that are active across the globe. And they basically, a lot of them are also linked with engineering companies, or they do engineering as well. So the main focus would be engineering, but because they're building something, they also need the environmental side of it. And these companies are massive companies across different countries. And then for sure, if you love traveling, that's even a better opportunity. You'd be able to go wherever they're working, which is everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's true. Let's talk a little bit about that, sort of the opportunities available with the BSc, relating to ecology. If you, for example, if there is a student in our audience, for example, who is pursuing a BSc in zoology or ecology, aside from the opportunities that you have, with field work, what other types of positions are there available in your industry?
So it is also something that I am still learning of new job positions in this
Yeah.
field, even when I've been working in it for a while now. The the one that I was most familiar with while studying is working for a university. So you can be a researcher. I wanted to lecture years ago, so I want to be a teacher. You can be a researcher. You can kind of study things, get questions in your head, and find the answer. Is a short one. But in the outside field, if it's not in a university, you can also work for environmental assessment practitioners. They are called EAPs. So it's basically a level above us. So the client wants to build something, then they contact the EAP, and then the EAP contacts us. So these
Okay.
people in the middle, they don't go to the field that much. So a lot of people, when they get families or they want kids and they don't want to be away from home for long, they
Yeah.
kind of go into this. But you can also go into this from the start. It is slightly less field work, slightly more client management, and
Yeah.
slightly more legislation. So working with the actual environmental laws that the country has. That's
Yeah.
also a big one that you can go into. Or doing environmental officer. So if a
Okay.
company is building a solar panel, a whole solar farm with a lot of solar panels, they need an environmental officer to basically make sure the company has all the things they need, so all the reports from people like me, and that they are still staying up to date with all the laws that they have to listen to, all the basically the mitigations we give them need to be put in
Yes.
place by someone. You can also do that with exactly the same degree or background.
Okay. All right. So we've got a couple of questions in the chat here. I'm just going to pull the first one up. So there's a lady here who's asking, is this a job you can do in other countries as well? What do you think?
Um, yes, it is. Other countries definitely have similar positions. The only challenge from moving over to, if you've studied in South Africa and you have work experience in South Africa, is that you actually, first thing, it sounds kind of obvious to say it, but their animals are different, their plants are
Of
different.
course. Yeah.
So you can move over. You might struggle to find working opportunities in other countries, but you have options. So you can always do short courses, online university courses to build your CV so that you kind of have this knowledge from South Africa and put it over into another country's knowledge.
Yeah.
It is something they have. The challenge is just making sure you can get over to it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, yeah, that makes perfect sense. You never think about it that way. You know, that,
Mm.
I mean, if we've got X, Y, and Z in terms of flora and fauna and animals, it's not going to necessarily translate even next door in another country, say for
Mm.
going across to another continent, you know?
Exactly. And
Um,
they also have different laws is a big one. So the writing skills that you need, that stays constant, which is great
yeah.
because if it's well developed, you have the skill. But you need to read up on their ecosystems, their nature, and you have to be able to prove that you know what's happening there.
Now that's true. Legislation, of course.
Mm.
We've got another one here. I'll just pull it up here. What are your career opportunities from here? Can you sub-specialize or how do you grow your career?
Yeah, great question. So, career opportunities, firstly, is to grow up the chain, basically, if you want to reach the top. It is not a career that has very firm levels in South Africa. So I'm a terrestrial ecologist and my boss is a terrestrial ecologist. So there's no like, now you're a senior
Ah,
one or now you're a 10-year senior ecologist or anything like that. It differs from company to company, but generally you would try to work on bigger projects. If you get better at what you do, you can work on more complicated, more sensitive projects compared to when you start, you work on very low sensitivity projects. So that just basically means low sensitivity is example, there's a field and people have been sending their cattle in there and they've been eating everything and a lot of people walk through it. Then someone with not a lot of experience can go do the site because the likelihood is there's not something very special there. But if
yes.
you're going into the Kruger, they only send the experienced people. So you can grow in the type of projects you do.
Yes.
Ultimately, you can open a similar type of company yourself,
Yeah.
um, or subspecialize is another big thing. How you can change your day-to-day life without necessarily going up in rank, but as you get more experience, you are still more valuable. So for our company, we have different units. We have terrestrial, which is plants and animals. We also have
Yeah.
wetlands, aquatics, people looking at what's in the water, so in rivers and dams. And we have avifauna, so they work on birds. And you can subspecialize basically be able to do more than one of these at the same time. So it takes a lot of work, but then you're double as valuable to your company because you can do two different units work at the same time.
Yeah. So how would you go about subspecializing? Would you have to go back to university and study something else, or?
So it does help if there are some maybe short courses available at universities. I know there is, especially regarding legislation, there are some short courses. Or if you want to work more into the management side of things, you can do courses on management. But if you're just changing from, for example, terrestrial to avifauna, the biggest thing again is getting the field skills that you need to do this. So if you're doing it at your own time, go outside and look what's around you and learn about the things. Learning birds by call, which is challenging to say the least, but that's something you need time for. And it depends on the company. So your company can also, if you talk to the boss or your manager, whoever's above you, and tell them you would love to go into this direction as well, they can always help let you review some reports from the other units, or maybe send you out to the field when it's low sensitivity, again starting at the bottom, working on the skills. But it's not
Yeah.
a whole other degree.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So a question relating to what you're saying just popped up. Someone's asking, do you have to choose one or the other? So flora, fauna versus animals, or can you do both of them?
It depends who you ask.
Okay.
I'm at the point where I don't believe you have to choose one or the other,
Yeah.
but it is a lot of work. So it depends on your own capability of how much workload you can take, how scattered your thoughts can be, and still stay in control of your brain, basically. Um, it is definitely easier if you start with just one. Make sure you have one handled, and then maybe you can add one.
Yeah.
Some people say at the end, don't even add one because then you'll forget the first one again. But it depends on your own capabilities, basically.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned, bosses earlier on. There's a question here from Wendy who says, "What is the typical interview process like for graduates with no experience? How could one? I'll show it on stage. How could someone prepare for interviews as someone just finishing university with no experience?"
So this is the rough part of this career, is it is very difficult to get into it, to get a start.
Yeah.
So if you are sending out CVs with no experience on it, you just have a degree, you are going to struggle to find people who will answer you. So you don't even worry about the interview stage because it's unlikely that you will get to that point. The biggest thing, it's rough, it's really rough. So the
Yeah.
biggest thing you can do to help this is get skills from places that you can actually prove it. So again, not just I've been spending 10 years in the field because I enjoy
Yeah.
going on hikes, rather get experience from like accredited places. You can even do a field guide association training, although it's expensive. You don't have to do it, but getting someone that you can shadow and try and follow them around so you get started with some work experience, because that will be your in.
Yeah.
After that, my interview process, I can't say for other companies. I was very lucky. I've only had one interview and it was successful.
Nice.
It was very informal. We literally had a coffee. We were just trying to figure out if my type of personality fits into the company, because at the end, when you go to the field, you spend a lot of time with someone. So
Yeah.
they need to be likable also.
Yeah.
So I guess that's another tip. You need to be hardworking. You need to be likable. And I don't mean like, oh, someone doesn't like blue eyes, so you don't have a chance. Just be
Of
a friendly,
course.
approachable person, taking responsibilities for your actions and being willing to work hard. That is a big thing that will already help you get into contact with someone who can get you to more experience.
Yeah. Yeah. You bring up such an important point, Undine. We're always talking at Gradlinc about the importance of having soft skills. So communication, being able to get along with the people at work, being able, like you've already mentioned, the right kind of skills to draft the necessary documentation. And it's so great that you mentioned this over here to also say that that was part of your interview process. You need to be able to see if you can actually gel with the people that you're going to be working with.
Yes.
There's another question here, but I'm very curious about something, so I'm going to throw in my question here. You talk a lot about field work. Is there a lot of camping involved in your line of work?
So, no, not yet. So it depends where
Okay.
you go.
Yeah.
I actually expected more camping,
Yeah.
but most of the time stay in bed and breakfast, which is luxury. So you get meals included when you go out. I think this is the norm for most places because it doesn't make sense to send someone else to work full day but they don't get any food. So you stay in nice places, usually as close as you can to the site.
Yeah.
You get food. If there's no food included, then you go to the nearest restaurant at night.
Nice.
We do camp, but not a lot. And I personally haven't been on a camping trip either. So it just depends
Okay.
on where the site is.
Yeah. So it's Indiana Jones, but like the upgraded version, so to speak.
Fancy, fancy Indiana Jones.
That's fantastic. So we have another question. There's a lot of focus, obviously, on BSc and zoology because you mentioned it, and someone would like to know: is it all theory while you're doing your degree, or do you actually get to work with the animals?
So, good question. Uh, if you mean work with animals, like handling an individual animal, almost never. That is
Okay.
not, zoology is not a degree that's going to teach you how to be a zookeeper, where you are interacting with animals or like an animal handler. Definitely not it. You also don't handle sick animals. We are not the veterinary side either.
Yeah.
But if you mean more practical, you're working with animals. So, for example, you maybe a big study can be catch and release. So, to
Okay.
determine how many animals there are in the Kruger, you would catch some of them, mark them in a certain way, release them, and then catch again the same number. And you see how many of the ones that you caught the first time you caught again. And then you can determine the population size. Some universities have a lot more practical parts like this. Also, if you study at places like TUT, the technological universities, it's a
Yeah.
little practical. I studied at Tux. It was very theoretical.
Yeah.
Depends on the university, depends on exactly what degree you studied. But if you want to physically hold and touch animals, zoology is not the direction for you.
Yeah. Rather vet sciences then. Yeah.
Yes.
Tell me, Andine, you say you did your degree at Tux, but you also mentioned you have your master's. Did you do both of your degrees at Tux?
I did. I stayed at Tux for 6.5 years. Started straight out of school, did my degree. Then I had a 1 year's honors, and then a 2 years master's that became 2.5 in the end, just because of
Yeah.
some delays. It was great staying at one university because you learn to know all the people around you. But again, there's also benefits of going to different universities and having a wider influence.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I still have 100,000 questions for you, but unfortunately, our time is nearly at the end. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for taking the time out of your Monday evening and talking to all of us here at Gradlinc and to the audience members. Just to anyone who's in the audience right now, if you have any questions with regard to anything that Andine has spoken to us about today, you can reach out to the Gradlinc team. And we're very, very happy to help you out, especially with regard to job shadowing or any kind of internships. We've obviously got the down low here at Gradlinc because we've got the speaker on hand. So Andine, I'm going to say thank you very much. And I wish you only the success in your career. And I hope you have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Priya. It was a great interview. I enjoyed
All
myself a
right.
lot.
Okay, awesome. All right. Bye.
Bye.